The autumn wind cut through my thin jacket like a knife as I ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps that burned my throat. Behind me, I could hear Marcus, his voice rising above the sound of traffic, slurred and venomous, hurling threats that made my skin crawl. "Natalie, you can't hide from me forever." My feet pounded against the sidewalk, sneakers slipping on wet leaves as I rounded the corner onto a street I didn't recognize. Somewhere in downtown Chicago, blocks away from the coffee shop where I'd been closing up for the night, Marcus had been waiting outside, like he'd been waiting every night for the past 2 weeks, since I'd gotten the restraining order. The restraining order that meant nothing, that he violated daily with texts, calls, showing up at my apartment, at my work, at the grocery store. The police said they couldn't do anything unless he actually hurt me, as if the bruises on my wrists from last month didn't count, as if the terror that kept me awake every night wasn't harm enough. My lungs were on fire. I'd been running for 4 blocks now, weaving through the evening crowds, hoping to lose him in the mass of people heading home from work. But Marcus was taller, stronger, and he knew these streets as well as I did. Better, maybe, since he'd grown up here while I'd only moved to Chicago 3 years ago, chasing dreams of independence that now felt laughably naive. "I just want to talk." His voice was closer. Too close. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. He was maybe 20 feet behind me, his face flushed with rage and whatever he'd been drinking. His hands were clenched into fists, and I knew with bone-deep certainty that if he caught me tonight, talking would be the last thing on his mind. My eyes scanned desperately for refuge. Most of the shops on this street were already closed, their darkened windows reflecting my own panicked face back at me. But ahead, maybe 30 feet away, I saw warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. A restaurant, its elegant facade standing out among the more modest storefronts. The sign above the door was in Cyrillic script, which I couldn't read, but beneath it in smaller letters, "Fine Russian Cuisine." I didn't care if it was Russian, Italian, or Martian. It was open, and that was all that mattered. I pushed my legs harder, ignoring the stitch in my side, the burning in my calves. 20 feet, 15, 10. I could hear Marcus's footsteps pounding behind me, could hear his breathing, heavy and angry, and so terrifyingly close. 5 feet. My hand hit the ornate brass door handle, and I yanked it open with strength, born of pure desperation. I practically fell through the doorway, stumbling over the threshold and catching myself against a podium that held a leather-bound reservation book. The sudden quiet was disorienting. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and voices and the general chaos of downtown Chicago at 7 p.m. Inside, there was only the soft murmur of conversation, the gentle clink of silverware against china, and classical music playing at a volume that suggested sophistication rather than entertainment. And every single person in the restaurant had stopped what they were doing to stare at me. I must have looked like a disaster, wild-eyed and panting, my blonde hair escaping its ponytail in messy tangles, my uniform shirt from the coffee shop stained with the latte someone had spilled on me earlier. I was soaked with sweat, despite the cold, trembling from adrenaline and fear, and probably tracking mud across what looked like very expensive carpeting. The restaurant was nothing like I'd expected from the outside. It was elegant in a way that spoke of old money and older traditions. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, which were decorated with what looked like Russian religious icons and landscapes painted in rich, somber tones. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, where well-dressed diners sat with wine glasses and plates of food that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. But it wasn't the decor or the patrons that captured my attention. It was the man standing near the back of the restaurant, frozen in the act of speaking to a server. He was tall, easily 6'2" or 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his black suit in a way that suggested the muscles beneath were earned, not just tailored. His hair was dark blonde, almost bronze, styled in that deliberately careless way that probably took more effort than it looked. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw dusted with carefully maintained stubble, and eyes that were pale. Gray or blue, I couldn't tell from this distance, but piercing even across the length of the restaurant. He looked like he'd walked out of a magazine spread on European aristocracy. Expensive, untouchable, and undeniably dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with the violence I was running from, and everything to do with the kind of power that didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. Those pale eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made me forget, just for a second, why I was here. Made me forget everything except the strange feeling that something fundamental had just shifted in the universe. Then Marcus hit the door behind me. The bang of his fist against the glass shattered the moment. I spun around to see him pressed against the door, his face contorted with rage, his voice muffled but audible through the glass. "Natalie, get out here. Now." My heart, which had just started to slow, kicked back into overdrive. I pressed myself against the podium, as if those few extra inches of distance would somehow protect me. "Is there a problem?" The voice came from beside me, smooth, cultured, with an accent that turned the R's into something almost growled and softened the consonants in a way that was unmistakably Russian. I turned to find a man in his 50s standing there, dressed in the uniform of a maitre d'. His expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes darted between me and the door with clear concern. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to disrupt your restaurant. I couldn't seem to form a complete sentence. That man?" The maitre d' nodded toward Marcus, who was still pounding on the door. "He is with you?" "No, I mean he's my ex-boyfriend. He's been following me. I have a restraining order, but he—" The words tumbled out in a rush. "I'm sorry. I'll leave. I just needed— Mikhail." The single word cut through my babbling like a knife through butter. The voice came from behind the maitre d', and I looked up to find the tall man from the back of the restaurant standing there. Up close, he was even more striking. Those eyes were gray, pale as winter ice, and they studied me with an intensity that made me feel simultaneously exposed and protected. "Yes, Alexei Dmitrievich?" The maitre d', Mikhail, turned with a deference that spoke of long familiarity and deep respect. "The young woman is frightened." Not a question. A statement delivered in that same accented English, each word precisely pronounced. And the man outside appears to be the source of her fear. "Yes, sir. She says he is an ex-boyfriend who has been following her." "Then he is not welcome in my establishment." Alexei's, that was his name apparently, eyes never left my face as he spoke. "Mikhail, please call Dmitri and Pavel. Have them escort the gentleman away from the premises. Make it clear that he is not to return. At once, Alexei Dmitrievich." Mikhail disappeared through a door marked private, and I found myself alone with this stranger who'd just taken control of my crisis with a few quietly spoken words. "Thank you," I managed, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry for causing a scene. I'll leave as soon as—" "You will not leave." Again, not a question. Not even really a command, despite the words. Just a simple statement of fact. "Not until I am certain that man will not follow you." "You don't have to. I do not do anything I do not wish to do." The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "And I wish to ensure your safety. You are in my restaurant now, under my roof. That makes you my responsibility." The way he said "my" sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. Or maybe it did, but a different kind of fear than what I'd felt running from Marcus. This was the fear of recognition, of knowing, on some instinctive level, that this man was dangerous in ways Marcus could never imagine. "What is your name?" he asked, those pale eyes studying me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. Natalie, I answered automatically. Natalie Pierce. Natalie. He said it slowly, tasting the syllables. I am Alexei Volkov. This is my restaurant. Volkov. The name tickled something in my memory, but I was too rattled to place it. The door marked private opened again, and two men emerged who made Mikhail look small. They were both well over 6 feet, built like linebackers, wearing dark suits that couldn't quite hide what I suspected were weapons beneath their jackets. They moved with the kind of efficiency that spoke of military training or something similar. Alexei spoke to them in rapid Russian, too fast for me to catch more than a few words despite the semester of Russian I'd taken in college. But I heard Marcus's name, saw the men nod once, and then they were heading for the door with a purpose that made my stomach clench with worry. Wait, I started, but Alexei's hand on my arm stopped me. They will not harm him, he said quietly, unless he gives them reason to. They will simply encourage him to leave and not return. I watched through the glass as the two men emerged onto the street. Marcus took one look at them and took a step back. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see Marcus's expression shift from rage to confusion to what looked like fear. One of the men, Dmitri or Pavel, I wasn't sure which, said something while the other simply stood there, arms crossed, radiating menace. Marcus looked past them to the restaurant, his eyes finding mine through the window. For a moment, I thought he might try to push past them anyway. Then the man who'd been speaking took a single step forward, and Marcus backed away. He said something, probably a threat or a curse, then turned and walked quickly down the street, glancing back over his shoulder twice before disappearing around a corner. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My knees went weak, and I would have collapsed if Alexei's hand hadn't still been on my arm, steadying me. Easy, he murmured, his other hand coming to my waist to support me. You are safe now. Come, you should sit. He guided me through the restaurant, past tables where diners had returned to their meals with studied disinterest that suggested they were very accustomed to not seeing things, to a private booth in the back corner. It was separated from the main dining room by a carved wooden screen, creating an alcove that felt simultaneously exposed and intimate. I sank onto the leather bench, my whole body trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline. Alexei slid into the seat across from me, his movements fluid and controlled. He said something in Russian to a passing waiter, who nodded and disappeared. You are shaking, Alexei observed. Not with concern exactly, but with the same careful attention he'd been giving me since I'd burst through his door. When did you last eat? I tried to remember. Breakfast, maybe? I'd been too nervous to eat lunch, and my shift at the coffee shop had run late. This morning, I think. His expression darkened fractionally. This ex-boyfriend. How long has he been following you? 2 weeks since I got the restraining order, but we've been broken up for 3 months. The words came easier now, maybe because he wasn't looking at me with pity or judgment, just that same intense focus. He didn't take it well, the breaking up, I mean. He said I belonged to him, that no one else would ever want me, that if he couldn't have me, no one would. And the police? Alexei's voice had gone very quiet, very cold. They said they couldn't do anything unless he actually hurt me, that the restraining order meant he wasn't supposed to come within 100 feet of me, but they couldn't arrest him unless he violated it in front of them, or unless I had proof he was threatening me. Proof? The word was laced with contempt. As if your fear is not proof enough. The waiter returned with a bottle of vodka and 2 glasses, along with a tray of what looked like appetizers, small pastries, caviar, things I couldn't identify, but that smelled amazing. Alexei poured 2 fingers of vodka into each glass, then slid one across to me. Drink, he instructed. It will help with the shock. I normally didn't drink. Growing up with an alcoholic father had cured me of any desire to touch the stuff. but something about the way Alexei said it made me pick up the glass and take a sip. It burned going down, but it was a clean burn, and he was right. It did help. The warmth spread through my chest, loosening the tight band of panic that had been constricting my breathing. "Better?" he asked, taking a measured sip of his own vodka. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good." He set his glass down with precision. "Now, you will tell me everything about this Marcus. His full name, where he lives, where he works. Everything." "Why?" The question came out before I could stop it. Alexei's pale eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something in them that made my breath catch. Not anger exactly, but a cold, calculated determination that was somehow more frightening than any rage could be. "Because," he said simply, "he has made the mistake of frightening someone under my protection. And I do not tolerate such mistakes. I'm not under your protection," I said weakly. "I just ran into your restaurant. And by doing so, you placed yourself under my roof. In Russian culture, hospitality is sacred. A guest in my home, and this restaurant is very much my home, is entitled to my protection." His expression didn't change, but something in his voice deepened. "And I have decided that you, Natalie Pierce, are more than a guest. You are mine to protect now." "You can't just decide that," I protested, but the words lacked conviction. His smile was slow and absolutely certain. "I already have." The car that arrived 20 minutes later was a black BMW 7 Series, with tinted windows so dark I couldn't see inside. Dmitri, the taller of the two men who'd escorted Marcus away, held the rear door open, while Alexei guided me toward it with a hand at the small of my back. "I can take the train home," I protested, though my voice lacked conviction. The thought of navigating Chicago's public transit system alone right now, knowing Marcus could be waiting at any station, made my stomach clench with renewed fear. "You could," Alexei agreed, his hand remaining steady on my back. "But you won't. Not tonight. Not until I am satisfied that your ex-boyfriend understands the consequences of approaching you again." I should have argued more. Should have insisted on my independence. On not owing this stranger anything. But the truth was, I was exhausted and terrified, and the warm interior of the BMW looked like the safest place in the world right now. I got in. The leather seats were heated, which I only realized when warmth began seeping into my cold, aching body. The interior smelled of leather and something else, a cologne that was woody and expensive, with notes of something I couldn't quite identify. It was the same scent that clung to Alexei as he slid in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body but not quite touching. Pavel, the other bodyguard, shorter but somehow more intimidating, took the driver's seat. He adjusted the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting mine briefly with an expression I couldn't read, before pulling smoothly into traffic. "Where do you live?" Alexei asked. I gave him my address in Logan Square, a neighborhood that was trying to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. The kind of area where you could still find affordable rent if you didn't mind the occasional sound of sirens at night and checking over your shoulder when you walked home after dark. Alexei's expression didn't change when I told him, but something in the set of his jaw suggested disapproval. "That is not a safe neighborhood for a woman living alone," he observed. "It's what I can afford on a barista's salary," I replied, more defensively than I'd intended. "Not all of us own expensive Russian restaurants." The corner of his mouth twitched. "No, not all of you do." He pulled out his phone, the screen casting a pale glow across his sharp features as he typed something in Russian. "Tell me, Natalie, what were your plans for this evening?" before Marcus interrupted them. "Go home, lock my door, maybe eat something if I wasn't too tired. Try to sleep." The routine sounded pathetically bleak when I said it out loud. "And tomorrow?" "Work. The coffee shop opens at 6, which means I need to be there at 5:30 to prep. You work alone at that hour? His fingers stilled on his phone screen. Sometimes. Usually there's a morning crew, but they've been short-staffed lately. I wasn't sure why I was telling him this. Maybe it was the vodka, or the adrenaline crash, or the strange sense that this man actually cared about the answer. Something dangerous flickered in those pale eyes. And Marcus knows this schedule? The question made ice form in my stomach. Yes. We dated for 8 months. He used to pick me up after my shifts sometimes, back when things were normal. Things were never normal with a man like that, Alexei said, his voice gone very quiet. Men who claim ownership of women, who react with violence when denied what they believe is theirs. Such men are never normal. They are predators, and predators must be dealt with accordingly. The certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else. A strange sense of relief at having someone acknowledge the danger I'd been living with. Someone who didn't tell me I was overreacting, or that I should just ignore Marcus until he got bored. How old are you, Natalie? Alexei asked suddenly. 26. Why? You are very young to be so alone in a city like this. It wasn't a judgment, just an observation. No family. My mom died when I was 15. Cancer. My dad. I trailed off, not wanting to explain about the drinking, the gambling debts, the way he'd disappeared when I was 19, and I'd never bothered to look for him. I don't have any family. Not really. Friends, then? Someone you could stay with until this situation with Marcus is resolved? I thought about Jenna from work, who had 3 roommates in a studio apartment. About David, my study partner from community college, who'd moved to Seattle last year. About how small my life had become, how carefully I'd isolated myself during my relationship with Marcus, because he'd made it so difficult to maintain friendships with his jealousy and his need to know where I was every second. No, I admitted quietly. Not really. Alexei was silent for a long moment, his pale eyes studying me in the dim interior of the car. Then he leaned forward and spoke to Pavel in Russian. The driver nodded once, and instead of continuing toward Logan Square, he took the next exit, heading north. Where are we going? I asked, alarmed. That's not the way to my apartment. No, Alexei agreed. It is not. You can't just kidnap me. I am not kidnapping you. His voice was patient, as though explaining something obvious to a child. I am taking you somewhere safe, somewhere Marcus does not know about, somewhere you can rest without fear. My apartment is not safe. He cut me off with 2 words delivered with absolute certainty. Marcus knows where you live, knows your schedule, knows you are alone. He will wait for you. Perhaps not tonight, now that he has seen my men, but tomorrow or the next day. He will wait, and he will try again. The truth of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. Marcus had already violated the restraining order dozens of times. A warning from 2 intimidating Russians wouldn't stop him permanently. It might make him more careful, might make him wait a few days. But he'd come back. He always came back. So what am I supposed to do? The words came out more desperate than I'd intended. I can't just hide forever. I have to work. I have bills. You will not hide. Alexei's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen before pocketing it. You will simply relocate, temporarily, until I have ensured that Marcus understands the consequences of his actions more thoroughly. Ensured how? His smile was cold. That is not something you need to concern yourself with. We drove in silence for another 15 minutes, heading into a neighborhood I recognized but had never been able to afford. Gold Coast, where lakefront property came with price tags that made my yearly salary look like pocket change. The buildings here were elegant, old money mixed with new, doormen standing at attention beneath awnings that probably cost more than my car. Pavel pulled up to one of the most impressive buildings on the block. All limestone and glass, with an Art Deco facade that spoke of 1920s glamour. A doorman in an actual uniform immediately approached the car, opening my door before I could reach for the handle. "Welcome home, Mr. Volkov," he said, with practiced deference, his eyes barely flickering toward me. "Shall I have your bags brought up?" "Miss Pierce has no bags," Alexei replied, coming around the car to stand beside me. "Please contact Elena and have her visit the apartment first thing in the morning with appropriate clothing." "Of course, sir. What size?" The doorman's eyes finally landed on me, making a quick professional assessment. "Never mind. I'll inform Elena." I wanted to protest, to say that strangers didn't need to buy me clothes, that I had perfectly good clothes at my own apartment. But Alexei's hand was already guiding me inside, and the words died in my throat as I took in the lobby. It was stunning. All marble floors and crystal chandeliers, with artwork on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. A security desk sat to one side, manned by 2 guards who nodded respectfully as Alexei passed. Everything about the space screamed money and power, and a level of security that made my crappy apartment building's broken buzzer system look pathetic. The elevator required a keycard to operate, which Alexei produced from his pocket. He inserted it into a slot, and the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. "Top floor," he said, gesturing for me to enter. Of course it was the top floor. Men like Alexei Volkov didn't live anywhere else. The elevator rose smoothly. So smoothly I barely felt the movement. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Something Russian, all sweeping strings and melancholy, that somehow fit the moment perfectly. "This is too much," I said, breaking the silence. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't just move into your home." "It is not my home," Alexei interrupted. "It is one of my properties. I maintain a residence here, yes, but I do not live here full-time. There are guest rooms. You will stay in one of those." "For how long?" "Until it is safe for you to return to your own life." He said it as though it were simple, as though upending a stranger's entire existence were just a minor logistical challenge. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse that made my breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan and the city skyline, the lights reflecting off the dark water like scattered diamonds. The space was decorated in shades of gray and black, with touches of deep blue, all clean lines and expensive furniture that managed to look comfortable despite being obviously designer. Original artwork hung on the walls, not the kind of prints you could buy at IKEA, but actual oil paintings with visible brushstrokes and signatures I'd probably recognize if I knew anything about art. A grand piano sat in one corner, positioned to take advantage of the view. The whole place screamed wealth, but it was wealth with taste, nothing ostentatious or flashy. "This way," Alexei said, moving through the space with the ease of long familiarity. He led me down a hallway lined with more art, past what looked like a home office and a formal dining room, to a bedroom that was larger than my entire apartment. It was decorated in softer tones than the main living space, cream and pale blue, with a bed that looked like you could get lost in it. Large windows offered the same stunning lake view, and a door on the far wall presumably led to a bathroom. "This is your room," Alexei announced. "The bathroom is through there. You will find everything you need. Elena will bring clothes in the morning, but there is a robe in the bathroom closet if you wish to change." I stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "I can't accept this." "You can, and you will." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "Natalie, you came to me for help. You ran into my restaurant seeking refuge. In doing so, you became my responsibility. I do not take such responsibilities lightly." "I'm not your responsibility," I said weakly. "I'm just someone who happened to run into your restaurant." He moved closer, and I found myself backing up until I hit the doorframe. He stopped just short of invading my personal space, but close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. In Russia, we have a saying, he said softly. Не было бы счастья, да несчастье помогло. It means, roughly, if not for bad luck, there would be no luck at all. You believe you simply happened to run into my restaurant. I believe fate brought you to my door. Either way, you are here now. Under my roof. And what is under my roof is under my protection. That's the second time you've said that, about things under your roof being your responsibility. Because it is true. His pale eyes held mine. I do not say things I do not mean, Natalie. This is not charity. This is not pity. This is me acknowledging what already is, that you are mine to protect now. Mine to keep safe. Mine. That word again. Mine. The way he said it sent shivers down my spine that I didn't want to examine too closely. I should call my work, I said, needing to break the intensity of the moment. Let them know I won't be in tomorrow. You will not be returning to that job. Not a question, a statement. Excuse me? It is not safe. Marcus knows where you work, knows your schedule. You cannot return there. Before I could protest, he continued. I have already made arrangements. You will work for me instead. Work for you? Doing what? The restaurant requires someone to manage reservations, coordinate with suppliers, handle various administrative tasks. The position pays significantly more than you make now, and it comes with the benefit of security. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice softened slightly. You will not be a charity case, Natalie. You will work for your keep, but you will work somewhere safe. I should have been angry at his presumption, at the way he was reorganizing my life without my input. But the truth was, the thought of going back to the coffee shop, of being alone and vulnerable when Marcus inevitably showed up again, made panic claw at my throat. When did you arrange all this? I asked instead. You've known me for less than an hour. 37 minutes to be precise. He pulled out his phone, showing me the time. And I arranged it in the car, while you were looking out the window. I sent Mikhail instructions to terminate your employment at the coffee shop with a generous severance, and to hire you at Volkov's beginning Monday. The position was already vacant. My previous administrator quit last week. Your arrival simply solved two problems at once. The efficiency of it was almost frightening. You can't just fire me from a job you don't own. I can, and I did. The owner of that coffee shop owes me certain favors. He will not object to releasing you from employment, especially when I offer to compensate him for the inconvenience. Alexei pocketed his phone. This is how things work in my world, Natalie. Problems are identified and solved quickly. You are a problem that needed solving. Now, you are solved. I'm not a problem, I protested. I'm a person. You are a person with a problem, he corrected. And now you are a person under my protection. Do you understand the difference? I wasn't sure I did, but I was too exhausted to argue anymore. The adrenaline had fully worn off now, leaving me hollow and shaking with fatigue. Alexei must have seen it in my face because his expression softened fractionally. You are tired. We will discuss details tomorrow. For tonight, rest. You are safe here. I promise you that. What about Marcus? I couldn't help asking. What if he finds out where I am? He won't. The certainty in Alexei's voice was absolute. And even if he did, he would not be foolish enough to approach this building. My security is comprehensive. Now, is there anything else you need? I shook my head, too overwhelmed to think of anything. Then I will leave you to rest. My room is at the end of the hall if you need anything during the night. He moved toward the door, then paused. Natalie? Yes? You did the right thing, running into my restaurant tonight. Whatever happens next, remember that. He left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind him. I stood alone in that beautiful room, staring at my reflection in the windows that overlooked the glittering city. 24 hours ago, I'd been a barista living paycheck to paycheck, constantly looking over my shoulder for my abusive ex-boyfriend. Now I was standing in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than I made in a year, under the protection of a Russian man who spoke about ownership with casual certainty. I should have been terrified. Should have been making plans to escape this bizarre situation as soon as possible. Instead, for the first time in months, I felt safe. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close the curtains on. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back. Marcus, the restaurant, Alexei, this penthouse. I sat up slowly, taking in the room properly for the first time. In daylight, it was even more beautiful than it had seemed last night. The view of Lake Michigan was breathtaking, the morning sun turning the water into liquid gold. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, everything in shades of cream and soft blue that felt deliberately calming. I'd showered last night in a bathroom that was larger than my bedroom at home, using products that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The robe Alexei had mentioned was thick terry cloth that felt like wrapping myself in a cloud. I'd fallen asleep almost immediately. The combination of emotional exhaustion and the most comfortable bed I'd ever been in pulling me under before I could overthink what I'd agreed to. Now, in the cold light of morning, reality was setting in. I'd spent the night in a stranger's home, a stranger who'd taken control of my life with a few phone calls and expected me to just accept it. A soft knock at the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Come in," I called, pulling the robe tighter around myself. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried several shopping bags bearing logos of stores I'd only ever window shopped at. "Good morning, Miss Pierce," she said with a slight accent. Russian, but softer than Alexei's. "I am Elena. Mr. Volkov asked me to bring you some things. You didn't have to—" I started, but she was already moving into the room, setting the bags on the bed with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Volkov was very specific about what you would need," she said, pulling out clothes with the confidence of someone who'd been doing this a long time. "I have brought basics, underwear, casual clothing, something more formal for the restaurant. Also toiletries, makeup if you wish to use it, everything in your size." She'd guessed my size perfectly, I realized as she held up a pair of jeans that looked like they'd actually fit. "How did you know?" Elena's smile was warm. "I have been dressing Mr. Volkov's guests for many years. You learn to assess such things quickly." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "He also asked me to give you this." She handed me a new smartphone still in its box. "Your number has been transferred from your old phone. Mr. Volkov thought you might wish to check for messages, but he asks that you do not tell anyone your current location. For your safety." I took the phone, feeling the weight of it in my hand. Where is my old phone? Being examined by Mr. Volkov's security team. "They are checking for tracking software. Sometimes men like your ex-boyfriend install such things without the woman's knowledge." Her voice held a note of disapproval that suggested she'd seen this before. The thought of Marcus tracking my phone, knowing where I was every moment, made my skin crawl. "And if they find something, then they will remove it and return the phone to you. Or if you prefer, they can simply dispose of it, and you can keep this new one. Mr. Volkov says the choice is yours." At least he was giving me some choices, even if they were small ones. Elena spent the next 20 minutes helping me sort through the clothes, explaining what was for what purpose, showing me how the coffee maker in the kitchen worked, and generally making me feel less like an intruder in this space. She was professional, but warm, treating me like an expected house guest, rather than a stray Alexei had dragged in off the street. "Mr. Volkov is in his office," she said as she prepared to leave. "He asked that you join him for breakfast when you are ready. Just follow the hallway to the left. It is the door at the end." After she left, I showered again, still marveling at the water pressure and the array of expensive products, and dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater that Elena had selected. They fit perfectly, and I tried not to think about how much money had been spent on clothes for a woman Alexei had known for less than 12 hours. I found his office easily enough. The door was ajar, and I could hear him speaking Russian on the phone, his voice low and controlled. I hesitated, not wanting to interrupt, but he must have sensed my presence because he looked up and beckoned me in. The office was impressive. Wall-to-wall bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages, a massive desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood, and more of those floor-to-ceiling windows offering that stunning lake view. Alexei sat behind the desk in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. He looked professional and powerful and completely in his element. He finished his call in rapid Russian, then set the phone down with precision. "Good morning, Natalie. I trust you slept well?" "Yes, thank you. The room is beautiful." "I am glad you approve." He rose from his chair with fluid grace. "Come. We will have breakfast, and we will discuss the arrangements for your employment." He led me to a dining room I hadn't seen last night. Smaller than what I'd glimpsed earlier, clearly designed for actual use rather than formal entertaining. A table was already set with fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, and what looked like blinis with caviar. "I wasn't sure what you preferred," Alexei said, pulling out a chair for me. So, I had the kitchen prepare options. "This is more than enough. Thank you." I sat, still feeling overwhelmed by the casual luxury of it all. He took the seat across from me, pouring coffee with the same precise movements he seemed to apply to everything. "Your phone. Did Elena give it to you?" "Yes. She said your security team is checking my old one for tracking software." "They found it." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes had gone cold. "Marcus installed commercial tracking software 3 months ago. He has been following your movements for quite some time." My hand shook as I reached for my coffee cup. That's why he always knew where I was, why he'd show up places I didn't tell him about. "Yes, the software has been removed from your old phone, but I would recommend using the new one regardless. That number is private. Only a few people have access to it. Marcus will not be able to contact you through it." "What about my work? My landlord?" "Mikhail has already contacted both. Your possessions from your apartment will be moved to storage. I have taken the liberty of paying for a climate-controlled unit for 6 months. Your landlord has been compensated for breaking your lease. The coffee shop has been informed you will not be returning." I set my coffee cup down before I dropped it. "You did all that this morning?" "I did it last night, after you went to bed. These things are simpler when one has the right connections." He took a sip of his own coffee. "You will begin work at Volkov's on Monday. That gives you the weekend to settle in, familiarize yourself with your new situation. Mikhail will train you on the reservation system and the administrative duties." "And I'll live here? How long?" "As long as necessary." His pale eyes held mine. "Until I am certain Marcus no longer poses a threat to you." "How will you know that?" His smile was cold. "Because I will make certain of it personally." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. Not of fear for myself, but of fear for what Alexei might do to Marcus. "You're not going to hurt him, are you?" "I am going to ensure he understands that you are under my protection, and that any further attempts to contact or frighten you will have consequences he would prefer not to experience." Alexei's voice was perfectly calm, but there was steel beneath the words. Whether that requires physical violence or merely the threat of it will depend entirely on how reasonable Marcus chooses to be. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. I will not get in trouble. He said it with absolute certainty. This is not the first time I have dealt with men who do not understand boundaries. I am quite experienced at making my point clear. I wanted to ask what that meant. Wanted to understand what kind of man I'd fallen into the orbit of. But something about the set of his jaw suggested those were questions better left unasked. Eat, he instructed, gesturing to the food. You barely ate last night, and you are too thin. I'm not too thin, I protested automatically. You are too thin for a woman who works on her feet all day and skips meals because she is afraid to leave her apartment. His voice softened slightly. While you are here, you will eat properly. This is not negotiable. I took a blini, spreading it with sour cream, and adding a small amount of caviar like I'd seen in pictures, trying not to think about how much this meal probably cost. It was delicious, delicate and rich and completely unlike anything I'd ever eaten before. Better, Alexei approved, taking his own food. Now, tell me about yourself, Natalie Pierce. Beyond the unfortunate situation with Marcus. Where are you from? What did you do before moving to Chicago? The question caught me off guard. I'm from Iowa originally. Small town, middle of nowhere. I came to Chicago 3 years ago too. I trailed off, the old dream feeling foolish now. To? He prompted. To write. I wanted to be a journalist or maybe a novelist, something with words. I laughed, but it sounded bitter even to my ears. Instead, I ended up making lattes and trying to afford rent. And the writing? I gave it up. After Marcus, after everything fell apart, I couldn't anymore. The words wouldn't come. Alexei was quiet for a moment, studying me with those pale eyes. Perhaps they will come again, now that you are safe. Maybe. I didn't believe it, but it was kind of him to say. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Alexei's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. Is everything okay? I asked. Dmitri has located Marcus, he said, setting his phone down. He is currently at his place of employment, a construction site in Bridgeport. Dmitri will deliver a message this afternoon. My stomach twisted. What kind of message? The kind that explains, in very clear terms, that you are no longer available to him, that you are under the protection of someone he would be very unwise to cross, and that if he attempts to contact you again, the consequences will be severe. Alexei's voice remained calm, conversational even. It is a courtesy, really. One warning before more permanent measures become necessary. Permanent measures? My voice came out higher than I intended. I do not make idle threats, Natalie. If Marcus proves unable to accept this warning, I will ensure he is removed as a threat in a more definitive manner. He said it the way someone might discuss taking out the trash, a problem that required a solution, nothing more. I should have been horrified, should have insisted he call off his men, that I didn't want violence on my behalf. But the truth was, a dark part of me felt relief at knowing someone was finally taking Marcus seriously, that someone with the power to actually do something was willing to protect me. You're not what I expected, I said instead. No. His eyebrow arched. What did you expect? I don't know. Not this. Not someone who... I gestured vaguely, struggling for words. Someone who would care this much about a stranger. You are not a stranger. His voice was firm. You became mine the moment you entered my restaurant. The moment you sought refuge under my roof. This is not charity, Natalie. This is me protecting what is mine. There was that word again. Mine. It should have bothered me more than it did. I'm not yours, I said, but the protest was weak. Not yet, perhaps. His smile was slow and absolutely certain. But you will be. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that should have felt claustrophobic, but somehow didn't. I woke each morning in that beautiful room overlooking the lake, finding breakfast already prepared by Elena, or sometimes by Alexei himself, who apparently enjoyed cooking traditional Russian dishes when the mood struck him. He was gone most days, leaving early for the restaurant or other business I wasn't privy to. But he always returned by early evening. We'd have dinner together, sometimes at the penthouse, sometimes at Volkov's after the dinner rush, when the restaurant quieted and we could eat in that same private booth where he'd first brought me. We talked during those meals, real conversations that went deeper than I'd expected. He asked about my childhood in Iowa, my mother's death, my complicated relationship with my absent father. I told him about my dreams of writing, about the novel I'd started and abandoned when Marcus had slowly suffocated my creativity with his constant criticism and control. Alexei told me about growing up in Moscow, about his grandfather who'd been a soldier, his grandmother who'd survived the siege of Leningrad, about coming to America at 16 with nothing but a fierce determination to build something his family could be proud of. The restaurant was my grandfather's dream, he said one evening over beef stroganoff he'd made himself. He always wanted to own a place where Russian immigrants could feel at home, where the food reminded them of what they'd left behind. I built Volkov's in his honor. He'd be proud, I said, meaning it. The restaurant was beautiful and successful, always full of patrons who clearly appreciated both the food and the atmosphere. Perhaps. Alexei's expression was unreadable, though he might have questions about some of my other business interests. It was the first time he'd directly acknowledged that the restaurant wasn't his only source of income. I'd noticed things over the past week. The way people deferred to him not just with respect, but with fear. The phone calls he took in Russian that ended with curt orders. The men who came to the penthouse at odd hours and left quickly after brief, intense conversations. What other business interests? I asked carefully. He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth I could handle. I import and export various goods, some more, regulated than others. I provide security services to businesses that require discretion. I facilitate agreements between parties who prefer not to involve legal channels. He paused. In Russia, we would call this being a bratva. Here, Americans use a cruder term, Russian mob. My breath caught. I'd suspected, of course. The security, the power, the casual way he'd made problems disappear. But having it confirmed was different from suspecting. I see, I managed. Does this frighten you? His pale eyes searched my face. I thought about it honestly. It should. But after Marcus, after months of being afraid and having no one help me, having no one take the threat seriously. I met his gaze. You did more to protect me in one night than the police did in 3 months. So no, I'm not frightened. Not of you. Something shifted in his expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. Good. Because I would never harm you, Natalie. But I will not lie to you about who I am or what I do. The question is whether you can accept that. Could I? I was living in his home, eating his food, preparing to work in his restaurant. I'd already accepted so much without questioning it too closely. What was one more truth added to the pile? I can accept it, I said quietly. As long as you promise me one thing. Name it. Don't let me become like him, like Marcus. The words came out in a rush. Don't make me afraid of you. Don't make me small or controlled or dependent. I can handle protection, Alexei. I can even handle possession, if that's what this is. But I can't handle being caged again. He set down his fork with deliberate care and leaned forward, his pale eyes intense. You think I would cage you? I think powerful men have a tendency to control the things they consider theirs. And you've made it very clear that you consider me yours. I do. No hesitation, no apology. But there is a difference between possession and control, Natalie. I claim you because I wish to protect you, to provide for you, to ensure that no harm comes to you. But I do not wish to diminish you. Your strength, your intelligence, your spirit. These are the things that made me notice you. Why would I destroy what I value? Because Marcus said the same things at first. He said he loved my independence, my creativity. Then slowly, piece by piece, he took them away until I didn't recognize myself anymore. Alexei stood, moving around the table with fluid grace until he stood beside my chair. He held out his hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. I took his hand, letting him pull me to my feet and lead me through the penthouse. We passed the living room, the office, continuing down a hallway I hadn't explored yet. He stopped at a door at the very end and unlocked it with a key from his pocket. I had this prepared for you, he said, pushing the door open. I was waiting for the right moment to show you. I stepped inside and stopped, my breath catching in my throat. It was an office, but not like Alexei's masculine space with its dark wood and serious artwork. This room was flooded with natural light from 2 walls of windows. A beautiful desk sat positioned to take advantage of the lake view, its surface clear except for a top-of-the-line computer and a leather notebook embossed with my initials. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, already filled with books I recognized as favorites I'd mentioned in passing. But it was the corner that made tears prick my eyes. A reading nook with a comfortable armchair positioned in perfect afternoon light. A small table beside it set with an expensive coffee maker and a selection of beans from countries I'd only dreamed of visiting. And above it, framed in simple but elegant frames, were the first 3 chapters of my abandoned novel. The one I'd told him about over dinner 2 nights ago. The one I thought existed only on a hard drive I'd packed away and tried to forget. How did you... I couldn't finish the question. I had someone retrieve your belongings from storage yesterday, Alexei said, standing close behind me but not touching. The hard drive was among them. I took the liberty of printing what I found. I hope you do not mind. You read it. Not a question. I did. You are talented, Natalie. Very talented. It is a crime that you stopped writing. Marcus said it was a waste of time, that I should focus on practical things, on being supportive of his career instead of chasing impossible dreams. Marcus was a fool. Alexei's voice was hard. And his foolishness cost you something precious. I would like to help you reclaim it. I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face now. Why are you doing this? Because I told you I would not cage you. His hands came up to frame my face, his thumbs gently wiping away my tears. Because seeing you diminished, seeing your light dulled by months of fear and abuse, is unacceptable to me. You asked me not to make you small. This is me ensuring you have space to be large. This is too much, Alexei. The room, the computer, the books. Is it? He challenged. You are going to work for me at the restaurant, yes. But you are also going to finish this novel. You will write every morning before work. This room is yours to do with as you please. Write, read, sit, and stare at the lake if that is what inspires you. But you will reclaim what was taken from you. I shook my head, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can. The words haven't come in so long. They will come. His voice was absolutely certain. Now that you are safe. Now that you are mine to protect rather than his to diminish. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered me. After Marcus, after fighting so hard to escape one man's ownership, I should have been running from another man who claimed me so absolutely. But Alexei was right. There was a difference between possession and control. Marcus had wanted to own me to make himself feel powerful. Alexei wanted to protect me to make me feel safe. One had been about him. The other was about me. I don't understand you, I admitted, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. You're dangerous and powerful and probably involved in things I don't want to know about. Why do you care so much about whether I finish a novel? He was quiet for a long moment, his pale eyes searching mine. Finally, he spoke. Because I understand what it is to have something precious taken from you. My family lost everything when we left Russia. Our home, our history, our sense of place in the world. My grandfather spent the rest of his life trying to reclaim that feeling of belonging. He never quite succeeded. His hands slid down to my shoulders. You lost something too. Your voice, your dreams, your sense of self. But unlike my grandfather's loss, yours can be recovered. And I find that I want very much to be the one who helps you recover it. Why me? The question escaped before I could stop it. You could have anyone. Why care about a broke barista with an abusive ex and broken dreams? His smile was slow and devastating. Because you ran into my restaurant looking for salvation and found it. Because when I told you what I am, you did not run. Because you have a strength in you that Marcus tried to crush, but could not quite destroy. Because when I look at you, I see something precious that needs protecting. And I have discovered that I am quite possessive of precious things. I'm not a thing, I whispered, though my protest lacked conviction. No. His thumb traced my lower lip. You are a woman. My woman, if you will accept it. Mine to protect, mine to provide for, mine to... He trailed off, his eyes darkening. Yours to what? My heart was hammering against my ribs. Mine to claim. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Completely, in every way that matters. But only if you want it to. Only if you choose it freely, without fear or obligation. I should have said no. Should have stepped back, maintained boundaries, kept this relationship professional and temporary. But the truth was, I'd been choosing Alexei from the moment he'd stood up in his restaurant and decided I was worth protecting. Every meal we'd shared, every conversation we'd had, every moment of safety I'd felt under his roof. I'd been choosing him without fully acknowledging it. And if I say yes? I asked. If I choose this, choose you. What does that mean? It means you stop being a guest in my home and become a permanent part of my life. It means I will continue to protect you, but I will also expect your loyalty in return. It means... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. It means I will not be content with you living here temporarily. I will want you here permanently, with me. That's a lot to ask after knowing someone for a week. It is, he agreed. But I have never been a patient man when I know what I want. And I know that I want you, Natalie. Not despite your broken pieces, but because of them, because I recognize in you a kindred spirit, someone who has survived something they shouldn't have had to endure and emerged still fighting. His words shouldn't have made sense. We barely knew each other. This whole situation was insane by any normal standard. But standing there in that beautiful room he'd created for me, looking into those pale eyes that saw me so completely, I felt something settle in my chest, a sense of rightness that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with instinct. I need time, I said finally. To think, to process. This is a lot. Of course. He stepped back, giving me space. Take all the time you need. But Natalie? Yes? While you are thinking, remember this. I do not make offers I am not certain about. When I say you are mine, I mean it with absolute certainty. The only question is whether you will accept that reality or fight against it. He left me alone in that beautiful room, with my unfinished novel framed on the wall, and a future I'd never imagined spreading out before me like an unwritten page. I spent the next 3 days in that office, writing in the mornings before work, just as Alexei had instructed. At first, the words came haltingly, rusty from disuse. But gradually, as the feeling of safety sank deeper into my bones, the sentences began to flow more easily. The novel was about a woman escaping an abusive relationship, art imitating life in a way that would have been painful if it hadn't felt so cathartic. But now the story had a new element, a man who stepped in as a protector, who saw the heroine's strength rather than her weakness. I didn't examine too closely why that character had pale eyes and spoke with a Russian accent. Alexei never asked to read what I was writing. He simply ensured I had uninterrupted time each morning, that good coffee was always available, that the space remained mine to use however I needed. I started working at Volkov's on Monday, as planned. Mikhail trained me on the reservation system and the administrative duties with patient thoroughness. The work was interesting, coordinating with suppliers from Russia, managing the complex web of reservations that always seemed to include at least a few names Mikhail warned me to give priority treatment to, handling the paperwork that kept the restaurant running smoothly. The staff treated me with cautious respect, though I noticed they gave me slightly more deference than Mikhail's previous assistant had received. It took me a few days to realize it was because they'd seen Alexei's behavior toward me, the way he kept me close, the way his hand lingered on my lower back when he passed, the way his eyes tracked me whenever I was in the room. They thought I was his. And maybe I was. On Thursday evening, a week and a half after I'd first run into Volkov's, Alexei found me in my office working on the next day's seating chart. "Come with me," he said without preamble. "There is something you need to see." He led me to his private office and closed the door behind us. Dmitri was there, standing with his hands clasped in front of him in a posture that suggested he was reporting on completed business. "Dmitri has news regarding Marcus," Alexei said, gesturing for me to sit. My stomach clenched with anxiety. "What kind of news?" "Marcus received my warning last Thursday," Dmitri said in his heavily accented English. "I explained to him that Miss Pierce was under Mr. Volkov's protection and that any further contact would be unwise. He did not take the warning well initially. Made threats, said he would not be intimidated." My heart sank. Of course Marcus hadn't listened. He never listened. "What happened?" I asked, dreading the answer. "I provided a demonstration of what consequences would look like if he chose to ignore the warning," Dmitri continued, his voice matter of fact. "Nothing permanent, simply educational. He understood the lesson." "He's alive?" I had to ask. "Very much alive," Alexei confirmed. "Bruised, perhaps a bit wiser, but alive. He will not bother you again, Natalie. Of this, I am absolutely certain." Relief washed through me, so intense it made me dizzy. "How can you be sure?" "Because," Alexei said, his voice going cold, "I made it clear that if he violated my protection again, the consequences would be far more severe. And because I have taken additional precautions to ensure he cannot easily locate you." "What kind of precautions?" "Marcus has been offered a very lucrative job opportunity in Alaska," Dmitri said, with what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Construction work on an oil pipeline. Excellent pay, housing included, contract for 1 year minimum. His employer here was persuaded to recommend him enthusiastically for the position." I stared. "You got him a job in Alaska?" "I got him a job far away from you," Alexei corrected. "He leaves next Monday. By the time he returns, if he returns, you will be so thoroughly integrated into my protection that he would not dare approach you." "Thoroughly integrated?" I repeated. Alexei moved to stand in front of me, his presence commanding even in the familiar space of his office. "This is what I meant about permanent measures, Natalie. Marcus is no longer an immediate threat. But to ensure he never becomes one again, you need to be more than just someone under my temporary protection. You need to be family." My breath caught. "Family?" Yes. His pale eyes held mine. There is a solution to this problem that ensures your permanent safety. That makes it clear to anyone who might threaten you that they would be making an enemy of not just me, but the entire Bratva structure I am part of. What solution? Marry me. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Marry you? I managed. We've known each other less than 2 weeks. Time is irrelevant. He said it with the same certainty he applied to everything. In my world, marriages are arranged quickly when strategic necessity demands it. This is no different. This is completely different. Those marriages are business arrangements. And this is also a business arrangement, he interrupted. One that serves both our interests. You get permanent protection, security, a family structure that will guard you fiercely. He paused. I get you, permanently, legally, mine in a way that no one can contest. What about love? The question sounded naive even as I asked it. What about it? He tilted his head slightly. You loved Marcus once, yes? How did that work out for you? The bluntness of it stung, but he wasn't wrong. Love is a poor foundation for marriage, Alexei continued. But mutual benefit, protection, respect, these things last. We have built something in these past days, have we not? Trust, understanding, even affection. That is more than many marriages begin with. And if I say no? His expression didn't change. Then you remain under my protection as you are now. I will not force you, Natalie. But understand what you are refusing. As my wife, you are untouchable. Anyone who threatens you threatens the Volkov family, threatens my entire organization. As my girlfriend, guest, employee, these relationships are less binding, less permanent. Dmitri cleared his throat softly, and Alexei nodded. The bodyguard left without a word, leaving us alone in the office. This is insane, I said quietly. People don't get married to solve security problems. In my world, they do exactly that. Alexei moved closer, until he stood directly in front of my chair. But this is not only about security. You know that. You have felt what I feel. This pull between us. This recognition. I had felt it. From the moment our eyes met across his restaurant, something had shifted in my universe. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude. Just the natural attachment that develops when someone saves you from danger. But it was more than that. It was the way he listened when I talked about my writing. The way he'd created a space for me to heal. The way he looked at me like I was precious rather than damaged. What would this marriage look like? I asked. Not quite agreeing, but not refusing either. Day to day? You would live here, in this penthouse. You would continue to work at the restaurant, continue to write. We would attend family functions together, present a united front to the world. And, he paused, and we would be husband and wife in all the ways that matter. Heat flooded my face at the implication. We hadn't been intimate yet. Alexei had been almost surprisingly restrained despite the intensity between us. But the promise of eventually had been there in every heated glance, every lingering touch. I need time to think, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You have until Sunday. His voice was firm. Monday, Marcus leaves for Alaska. Before he goes, I want the marriage finalized so there can be no question of your status. If you agree, we will have a small ceremony, just family and close associates. Nothing elaborate, but legally binding. 3 days? That's not enough time. It is more than enough. He leaned down, his hands on the arms of my chair, caging me in. Natalie, I am not a patient man. I know what I want, and I want you. As my wife, as my partner, as mine in every way that matters. The question is not whether this will happen. The The question is whether you will fight against what is inevitable or accept it with grace. The presumption should have infuriated me. Instead, I felt something else, a strange sense of relief at having someone so absolutely certain about something when I'd spent so long feeling uncertain about everything. And if I accept? My heart was racing. If I say yes? His smile was slow and predatory. Then you will be mine. Finally, completely, legally. And I will spend the rest of my life ensuring you never regret that choice. He straightened, giving me space to breathe. Think about it. But Natalie? Yes? When you make your decision, remember this. I do not make offers I am not prepared to follow through on completely. If you become my wife, you will want for nothing. You will be protected, cherished, given every opportunity to build the life you want. But you will also be mine. That is not negotiable. After he left, I sat alone in his office, staring at my reflection in the windows that overlooked the city. 10 days ago, I'd been running from one man who claimed to own me. Now I was considering marrying another man who said the same thing, but in a completely different way. Marcus's ownership had been about control, about making me small enough to fit into his idea of what I should be. Alexei's ownership was about protection, about giving me space to grow into who I was meant to be. One had diminished me. The other might just save me. The question was whether I was brave enough to choose it. I spent the next 2 days in a state of suspended anxiety, weighing an impossible decision. Marriage to a man I'd known for less than 2 weeks. A man who was undeniably dangerous, who commanded a criminal organization with casual authority, who spoke about ownership with absolute certainty. But also a man who'd given me safety when I had none, who'd created space for me to heal and grow, who looked at my broken pieces and saw something worth protecting rather than something to exploit. Elena noticed my distraction, bringing me tea and homemade pastries while I sat in my writing room staring at a blank page. Mikhail gave me sympathetic looks at the restaurant when I fumbled reservations I would normally handle flawlessly. Even Dmitri, usually stoic and intimidating, seemed to soften slightly around me, as though he understood what I was grappling with. But it was Alexei who gave me space. He didn't press, didn't ask for updates on my decision, didn't try to seduce me into agreement. He simply continued being exactly what he'd been since the night I ran into his restaurant. Steadfast, protective, absolutely certain about what he wanted. Friday night, he took me to dinner at a small Russian restaurant I'd never heard of, tucked away in a neighborhood that still had Cyrillic signs and women in headscarves walking arm in arm. We ate pelmeni and drank vodka, and he told me stories about his grandmother, who'd survived impossible hardships with her dignity intact. She taught me that strength is not about never breaking. He said, his pale eyes thoughtful. It is about what you do after you break. Whether you let the broken pieces define you, or whether you forge something new from them. Is that what you think I'm doing? I asked. Forging something new? I think you are deciding whether to allow yourself to. His hand covered mine on the table, warm and solid. You have been broken, Natalie. Marcus saw to that. But you are not destroyed. The pieces are still there, waiting to be reassembled into something even stronger than before. And marrying you would help with that? Marrying me would give you the security to do it yourself. He corrected gently. I cannot fix you. That is work only you can do. But I can ensure that while you are doing it, you are safe, protected, free from the fear that has haunted you for months. Saturday morning, I woke to find a garment bag hanging on my door and a note in Alexei's precise handwriting. In case you need options. Whatever you decide, I hope you will join me for dinner tonight. A. Inside the bag was a wedding dress, simple but elegant cream-colored silk that would fall just below the knee, with delicate lace sleeves and a fitted bodice. It was exactly my style, exactly what I would have chosen for myself if I'd been planning a wedding. Which meant Alexei had paid attention to every casual comment I'd made about fashion, every picture I'd lingered over in magazines he kept in the living room. I should have been angry at the presumption. Instead, I felt something else, a recognition of how thoroughly he'd been learning me, how completely he'd been preparing for my acceptance. That evening I dressed carefully for dinner. Not in the wedding dress, but in a deep blue dress Elena had selected weeks ago, one that made my eyes look brighter and my skin glow. I took care with my hair and makeup, not because I'd made my decision, but because I wanted to look like someone worthy of the choice Alexei was offering. When I emerged from my room, I found him waiting in the living room, wearing a dark suit that made him look like he'd walked out of a magazine spread. His pale eyes widened fractionally when he saw me, the only indication that my appearance affected him. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. Where are we going?" "Somewhere private. Somewhere we can talk without interruption." He offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. We didn't go far, just up one more flight of stairs via a private elevator I hadn't known existed. The doors opened onto a rooftop terrace I hadn't realized was there, transformed into something magical. String lights were draped overhead, casting a warm glow over a small table set for two. Candles flickered in hurricane glasses, and a bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket. Beyond the intimate setting, the Chicago skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, and Lake Michigan stretched dark and infinite toward the horizon. "When did you do this?" I breathed. "This afternoon while you were writing." He led me to the table, pulling out my chair with old-world courtesy. "I wanted somewhere special for tonight, somewhere worthy of the decision you are making. You're very confident I've made a decision. I am confident you will make the right one." He poured champagne with steady hands. "But even if you refuse me, I wanted you to have this moment. This evening where you are treated as you deserve, with respect, with care, with attention to what brings you joy." The champagne was excellent, dry and crisp with bubbles that tickled my nose. We ate dishes Alexei had prepared himself, traditional Russian food served with modern elegance, each course more delicious than the last. We talked about everything and nothing, falling into the easy conversation that had developed between us over the past days. It was only after dessert, a delicate honey cake that melted on my tongue, that Alexei finally addressed the elephant hovering over the evening. "Have you made your decision?" he asked, his pale eyes steady on mine. "I have questions first." "Ask them." "If I marry you, do I have freedom? To work, to write, to have friends, to live my own life?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "With the understanding that you will need security when you leave the penthouse or the restaurant. This is not negotiable. My enemies are real, and they would not hesitate to use you against me. But within that constraint, you are free to pursue whatever you wish. And if I want to leave? If this doesn't work? If I'm miserable?" His jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I would not make it easy. I am not a man who gives up what is mine without a fight, but neither am I a man who keeps someone prisoner against their will. If you were truly miserable, if you truly wanted out." He paused, as though the thought physically pained him. "We would find a way that kept you safe while respecting your choice. You say you're not patient, but that sounds remarkably patient." "I am not patient about wanting you," he corrected. "But I am pragmatic about keeping you. A woman held against her will becomes resentful, bitter, diminished. I do not want that for you. I want you happy, Natalie. I want you thriving. I simply want those things to happen while you are mine." I took a sip of champagne, gathering my courage for the next question. "What would you expect from me as your wife? beyond the public appearances and the security considerations. Loyalty. His voice was firm. Absolute loyalty. In my world, betrayal is the unforgivable sin. I would expect that you do not share our private business with outsiders, that you do not undermine my authority in front of my men, that you stand with me even when we disagree privately. That sounds reasonable. And I would expect. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I would expect you to share my bed, to be my wife in all ways, not just on paper. Heat flooded my face, but I held his gaze. What if I'm not ready for that? After Marcus, after everything, physical intimacy is complicated, he finished for me. I understand. I would not force myself on you, Natalie. When we come together, it will be because you want it as much as I do. But I will be honest, I want you. I have wanted you since the moment you ran into my restaurant. And I will pursue that want with patience and persistence until you feel safe enough to want me back. The honesty of it was startling. No pretense of being content with a platonic arrangement, but also no demand for immediate intimacy. Why me? I asked for what felt like the 100th time. Really? You could have any woman. Why marry someone broken? You are not broken. His voice was sharp. Damaged, perhaps. Healing, certainly. But not broken. And I choose you because you ran into my restaurant looking for salvation and found it. Because when I told you what I was, you did not run away. Because you write beautiful words and drink terrible coffee and get this small crease between your eyebrows when you are concentrating. His hand reached across the table to trace that very crease. Because you are strong enough to survive what should have destroyed you, and brave enough to consider rebuilding. Because when I look at you, I see home. And I have not felt that since I left Russia 30 years ago. Tears pricked my eyes at the raw honesty in his voice. I'm scared. I know. And I would be concerned if you were not. This is a large decision. A permanent commitment to a man you barely know. He stood, moving around the table to crouch beside my chair, taking my hand in both of his. But let me ask you this. Are you more scared of marrying me, or of going back to being alone and unprotected? Are you more afraid of belonging to me, or of belonging to no one? The question cut through all my rationalizations, all my careful weighing of pros and cons. Because the truth was, I'd been alone for so long. My mother was dead, my father gone, my friends scattered or alienated by Marcus's jealousy. I'd spent 3 years in Chicago building nothing permanent, forming no real connections, drifting through a life that felt like waiting, rather than living. Alexei was offering me something different. Not just safety, though that was part of it, but belonging, purpose, a place in the world where I mattered to someone, where my presence made a difference. What happens after I say yes? I asked, realizing as I spoke that I'd already made my decision. You said Monday. That's 2 days away. Tomorrow we have a small ceremony here at the penthouse. Just family. Mikhail, Elena, Dmitri, Pavel, a few others from my inner circle. Father Constantine from the Russian Orthodox Church will perform the service. It will be legal, binding, and private. That's it? No big wedding, no. If you wish for a larger celebration later, we can arrange it, he interrupted. But for now, I want it done quickly, quietly, before Marcus leaves for Alaska. I want him to know, without question, that you are forever beyond his reach, that you belong to the Volkov family now. The Volkov family? I repeated. That's what I'd become? Natalie Volkov? Natalia Volkova properly, he corrected, with a slight smile. In Russian, women's surnames end differently. But yes, you would take my name, my protection, my life, and I would take you as mine in every way that matters. I looked down at our joined hands, his so much larger than mine, scarred across the knuckles in ways that suggested violence I'd never witnessed, but warm and steady and absolutely certain. "Yes," I said, the word escaping before I could second-guess myself. "I'll marry you." For a moment, Alexei was completely still, as though he hadn't expected the answer despite his earlier certainty. Then something fierce and possessive flashed across his face, and he stood, pulling me up with him and into his arms. "Say it again," he commanded, his voice rough with emotion. "Say you will be my wife." "I'll be your wife," I repeated, and felt something settle in my chest. Not contentment exactly, but rightness, as though I'd been waiting my whole life to be claimed by someone who saw my value rather than my vulnerability. His kiss was different from the chaste brushes of lips we'd shared before. This was claiming, possession, a promise, and a threat wrapped together. His hands framed my face with surprising gentleness, even as his mouth demanded everything I had to give. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "Mine," he breathed. "Finally. Completely mine." "Yours," I agreed, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. The next morning, Elena woke me early with tea and a gentle reminder that I had preparations to make. The wedding was set for 4 in the afternoon, enough time to make me presentable, but not enough to work myself into a panic. "Mr. Volkov asked me to help you prepare," Elena said, her eyes soft with something that looked like approval. "He wants everything to be perfect for you." "It's just a small ceremony," I protested weakly. "It is your wedding day," she corrected firmly. "Small or large, it should be special." She helped me shower and style my hair, leaving it down in loose waves rather than the severe updos I usually wore for work. The makeup she applied was natural but polished, making my eyes look larger and my skin glow. When she brought out the cream silk dress from yesterday's garment bag, I didn't protest. It fit perfectly, of course. Alexei's attention to detail was flawless. The dress was elegant without being fussy, the kind of thing I could imagine wearing again rather than hanging in a closet as a symbol of a single day. The lace sleeves covered my arms, a detail I suspected Alexei had specified after noticing how self-conscious I was about the fading bruises Marcus had left. "Beautiful," Elena pronounced, stepping back to admire her work. "Mr. Volkov will not be able to take his eyes off you." "Elena," I said suddenly, "do you think I'm making a mistake? Marrying someone I've known for less than 2 weeks?" Her expression softened. "I have known Alexei Dmitrievich for 15 years, since he opened Volkov's. I have seen him with many women, beautiful women, sophisticated women, women from good families who would have made advantageous matches." She took my hands in hers. "He looked at none of them the way he looks at you, and none of them made him smile the way you do. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind takes months to accept." "That's very romantic." "I am Russian," she said with a small smile. "We understand suffering and passion better than most, and I see in you both the suffering you have endured and the passion that will bloom when you allow yourself to feel safe enough for it." The ceremony was held in the living room, which had been transformed with white roses and candles. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered that stunning lake view, and the afternoon sun cast everything in golden light. There were perhaps 20 people present: Mikhail and Elena, Dmitri and Pavel, a few other men I recognized from the restaurant, and their wives. Father Constantine was an elderly man with a long white beard and kind eyes, dressed in ornate vestments that suggested this was not his first Russian wedding. But I saw none of them clearly, because my eyes found Alexei the moment I entered the room, and I couldn't look away. He wore a black suit, no tie, the first 2 buttons of his white shirt undone in a concession to informality. His pale eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. As I walked toward him, his expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name: finally settling on something that looked like wonder. "You are radiant," he murmured as I reached him, taking my hands in his. "More beautiful than I imagined." The ceremony was conducted partially in Russian, partially in English for my benefit. Father Constantine spoke about the sanctity of marriage, about the bonds that unite families, about the responsibilities husband and wife owe each other. I understood perhaps half of what he said, but the important parts were clear enough. When it came time for vows, Alexei spoke in English, his voice steady and sure. "I, Alexei Dmitrievich Volkov, take you, Natalia, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you with everything I have, to provide for you in all ways, to cherish what is precious in you, and defend it against all threats. I promise that you will want for nothing while I draw breath, that you will be safe in my care, that you will be mine, and I will be yours from this day forward." My turn. My voice shook only slightly as I spoke. "I, Natalie Rose Pierce, take you, Alexei, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to stand with you, to trust in your protection, to be loyal in all things. I promise to build a life with you, to be your partner and your wife, yours and mine from this day forward." The rings were simple platinum bands, but mine had a delicate pattern of vines engraved on the inside, a detail I would only notice later, but one that made me understand how much thought Alexei had put into even the smallest elements. "By the power vested in me by God and the Church," Father Constantine intoned, "I pronounce you husband and wife. May your union be blessed with health, happiness, and many years together." Alexei didn't wait for permission. His hands framed my face, and he kissed me with a possessive certainty that made several of the guests chuckle. When he finally pulled back, both of us breathing hard, he whispered against my lips, "Mine. Finally, legally, mine." "Yours," I agreed, and felt the weight of the commitment settle over me like a mantle. The celebration that followed was warm and genuine. Elena had prepared traditional Russian foods, a feast of blini and caviar, pelmeni and beef stroganoff, honey cakes and compote. Someone produced vodka, and toasts were made in Russian that made everyone laugh, and occasionally made Alexei shoot warning looks at his men. "What are they saying?" I asked him during one particularly enthusiastic toast from Dmitri. "They are being inappropriate about wedding nights," he said, his hand tightening possessively on my waist. "I will have words with them later." "Don't," I said impulsively. "Let them celebrate. It's a wedding. People are supposed to be inappropriate." His expression softened. "You are more generous than I deserve." "Probably," I agreed, then added more seriously, "But you're stuck with me now." "Yes," he said with deep satisfaction. "I am." As the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alexei led me to the windows that overlooked the city. Behind us, the celebration continued, laughter and conversation in Russian and English mixing together, the clink of glasses, and the warm feeling of family. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly, his arm around my waist holding me close to his side. Was I? 2 weeks ago? I'd been running from a man who wanted to control me, terrified and alone. Now I stood in a penthouse I called home, married to a man who commanded an empire with absolute authority, surrounded by people who'd welcomed me into their circle. "I think so," I said honestly. "It's strange. It all happened so fast. But yes, I think I'm happy." "Good." His lips brushed my temple. "I will work every day to ensure you remain so." "That's a lot of pressure on yourself." "I'm accustomed to pressure." His hand splayed possessively across my stomach. "And you are worth the effort." As the celebration wound down and guests began to leave, each one embracing me and welcoming me to the family with varying degrees of English proficiency, I felt the weight of what came next settling over me. The celebration was over, the ceremony complete. Now it was just Alexei and me, husband and wife, expected to consummate what we'd promised. "You are nervous," Alexei observed after the last guest had departed and we stood alone in the living room. "A little," I admitted. "We do not have to do anything tonight," he said, surprising me. "The marriage is legal regardless. We can wait until you feel ready." "You said you weren't a patient man." "I am not patient about wanting you." His pale eyes were dark with desire. "But I can be patient about having you. I want you willing, Natalie. Eager, not simply compliant because you think it is expected." The honesty of it made my decision easier. "I am willing," I said quietly. "Maybe not eager yet, that might take time, but willing. And I'd rather not spend our wedding night apart." His smile was slow and absolutely devastating. "Then come with me, wife. Let me show you what it means to be mine." He led me down the hallway to his room. Our room now, I supposed. It was larger than mine, decorated in shades of charcoal and navy, masculine but not oppressively so. The bed was enormous, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same stunning view as the rest of the penthouse. "I am going to undress you now," Alexei said, his voice low. "Slowly. If at any point you want me to stop, you say so." "Yes?" "Yes," I whispered. His hands were surprisingly gentle as they found the zipper of my dress, sliding it down with deliberate slowness. The silk pooled at my feet, leaving me in the delicate white lingerie Elena had provided. Alexei's breath caught, his pale eyes darkening as they traveled over me. "Beautiful," he breathed. "More beautiful than I imagined. And I have imagined this many times since the night you ran into my restaurant." He undressed himself with efficient movements, revealing a body that was exactly what I'd suspected. Lean muscle and pale skin marked with scars that told stories of violence I'd probably never fully understand. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, power and control evident in every line. When he finally pulled me against him, skin to skin, I tensed instinctively. Old memories of Marcus's rough handling, his disregard for my pleasure, his use of my body without concern for me surfacing despite my attempts to suppress them. Alexei felt it immediately. "We stop," he said, already pulling back. "No." I caught his arm. "I want this. I want you. I need you to be patient with me. Marcus?" I couldn't finish. Understanding darkened Alexei's expression. "He took without asking. Made you feel used rather than cherished." "Yes." "Then I will show you the difference." It was a promise and a vow. "Tonight, you will understand what it means to be worshipped rather than taken. To be cherished rather than used. To be mine in the way I have always meant it. Protected, valued, treasured." What followed was a claiming, but one completely different from anything I'd experienced with Marcus. Alexei was patient and thorough, learning what made me gasp with pleasure rather than pain, building heat between us slowly until I was the one pulling him closer, the one demanding more. When we finally came together, it felt like completion, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. He kept his eyes on mine the entire time, watching my face for any sign of discomfort, his hands gentle, even as his body was commanding. Afterward, we lay tangled together in his sheets, my head on his chest as his fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing what had become our ritual question. "No regrets," I confirmed. "Though I still think you're insane for marrying someone you barely know." "I know everything I need to know." His arm tightened around me. "You are strong and brave and more resilient than you give yourself credit for. You write beautiful words and give second chances to a man who probably does not deserve them. You are mine, Natalia Volkova, and I am yours. That is all that matters. Natalia Volkova, I repeated, testing the name. That's going to take some getting used to. You have the rest of your life to get used to it. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Welcome to the family, wife. As I drifted toward sleep, safe and warm in the arms of a man who'd claimed me with absolute certainty, I thought about the path that had led me here. Running from Marcus, stumbling into Volkov's, meeting Alexei's pale eyes across a restaurant, and feeling something fundamental shift. It should have been terrifying. By any rational measure, I'd traded one form of possession for another. But Alexei was right. There was a difference between possession and control. Marcus had wanted to diminish me. Alexei wanted to protect me. One had been about him. The other was about me. I was Natalia Volkova now, wife to a Bratva boss, under the protection of a man who spoke about ownership with absolute certainty, but showed me gentleness in every touch. It wasn't the life I'd planned. But then, I'd learned that plans were just suggestions the universe laughed at. This was my life now. Strange, unexpected, built on a foundation of fear, transformed into safety. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The first week of marriage was an adjustment in ways I hadn't anticipated. Not because Alexei was difficult. If anything, he was surprisingly considerate about giving me space to process what we'd done. But because being his wife changed everything about how the world interacted with me. At Volkov's, the staff's cautious respect transformed into something deeper. Deference mixed with genuine warmth as they welcomed me fully into the family. Mikhail started teaching me Russian phrases beyond the basic greetings I'd learned, his patience endless as I butchered the pronunciation. The kitchen staff began preparing my favorite dishes without being asked, and the servers looked to me for direction on matters they once would have taken only to Alexei. They respect you, Alexei explained one evening as we closed the restaurant together. Not just because you are my wife, but because you have proven yourself worthy of that position. You work hard, you treat them fairly, you do not abuse the power your position gives you. In our culture, these things matter greatly. The penthouse felt different too. What had been a temporary refuge transformed into a home as I slowly added my own touches. Books on the shelves, a blanket my mother had crocheted draped over the sofa, small changes that made the space feel lived in rather than staged. Elena approved of every modification, often appearing with suggestions or items she thought would enhance what I was trying to create. And there was Alexei himself. My husband. The word still felt strange in my mouth, but increasingly right. He was attentive without being suffocating, protective without being controlling. He encouraged my writing, often reading passages I was brave enough to share, and offering thoughtful feedback that showed he understood what I was trying to achieve. "This character," he said one morning, pointing to a section of my manuscript. "He is too soft. A man in his position would not hesitate as much. He would act decisively, even if the action troubled him later." "You're saying I should make him more like you," I observed. His smile was slow. "I am saying you should make him realistic. Men who survive in dangerous worlds do not survive by being indecisive. They may have doubts, I certainly do, but they act despite them." The intimacy between us deepened gradually. After our wedding night, we fell into an easy physical rhythm, some nights passionate and intense, others gentle and slow, occasionally simply falling asleep in each other's arms, too exhausted from the day's demands for anything more than closeness. He learned my body with the same methodical attention he applied to everything, discovering what made me gasp and arch into him, what touches soothed rather than aroused. And I learned his, the old bullet wound on his shoulder that ached in cold weather, the scar on his ribs from a knife fight he'd never fully explained. the way his breath hitched when I kissed the spot just below his ear. "You are smiling," he observed one evening as we lay tangled together, moonlight streaming through the windows. "I was just thinking how strange this is," I admitted. 3 weeks ago, I didn't know you existed. Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. That is not strange. That is fate. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "Some people are meant to find each other, Natalia. We simply found each other faster than most." It was on the 8th day of our marriage that the first real complication arose. I was working at the restaurant, managing the evening's reservations and coordinating with a supplier about a shipment of specialty vodka, when a woman walked in who made every person in the room go still. She was stunning, tall and willowy with blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my car used to be worth. But it wasn't her beauty that caused the reaction. It was the way Mikhail's face went pale when he saw her, the way Dmitri immediately moved to intercept her, the way the entire staff seemed to hold their breath. "I need to see Alexei," she said in Russian-accented English, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from being accustomed to getting what she wanted. "Mr. Volkov is not available at the moment," Dmitri replied, positioning himself between her and the private dining area where Alexei was meeting with some business associates. "He will be available for me." She tried to move past him, but Dmitri's hand caught her arm, gently but firmly. I rose from my desk, uncertain what was happening, but sensing it was important. "Can I help you?" I asked, moving into her line of sight. Her eyes, ice blue and calculating, swept over me with dismissive assessment. "And who are you?" "Natalia Volkova," I said, using my married name deliberately. "Alexei's wife." The shock that crossed her face was quickly masked, but not before I saw genuine surprise. "Wife? Alexei married?" She laughed, but it sounded brittle. "That is impossible. He has never even considered marriage." "Nevertheless," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the anxiety rising in my chest. "We were married last Sunday. Now who are you?" "I am Katerina Sokolova," she said, drawing herself up to her full height. "And Alexei and I have an understanding that clearly he has decided to disregard." Before I could respond, Alexei emerged from the private dining room, his expression thunderous. When he saw Katerina, something dangerous flickered in his pale eyes. "You were not invited here," he said coldly, speaking in English for my benefit. "And you are not welcome." "Alexei, darling," she purred, switching to Russian. "English," he cut her off sharply. "Out of respect for my wife." Katerina's eyes narrowed. "So it is true. You actually married her. Some American nobody you met, a few weeks ago?" She looked at me with undisguised contempt. "What could she possibly offer you that I could not?" "Everything," Alexei said flatly. "She offers me everything you never could. Now leave, immediately." "We had an arrangement. We had nothing." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You presumed an arrangement based on a single dinner 2 years ago, where I made it abundantly clear I had no interest in anything permanent with you. If you have convinced yourself otherwise, that is your delusion, not my responsibility." I watched the exchange with growing unease. Whoever this Katerina was, she clearly had expected a different reception, and the way she was looking at me, with calculation rather than mere jealousy, suggested she saw me as an obstacle to be removed rather than accepted. "This is not over, Alexei," she said quietly, switching back to Russian for one final barb before turning on her expensive heels and stalking out. Silence fell over the restaurant. Alexei's jaw was tight with barely controlled anger, and several of his men had materialized from various corners, drawn by the confrontation. "Mikhail," Alexei said, his voice deadly calm. "Ensure that Katerina Sokolova's name is added to the list of persons not welcome in any of my establishments. If she attempts to enter again, She is to be removed immediately, and I am to be informed. Yes, Alexei Dmitrievich. Mikhail nodded, pulling out his phone. Alexei turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Come. We will talk privately. He led me to his office and closed the door firmly behind us. For a moment, he simply stood there, hands clenched into fists, visibly working to control his anger. I apologize, he said finally. You should not have been subjected to that. Who is she? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. No one important. He moved to the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline. Katerina is the daughter of another Bratva family. Her father has been trying for years to arrange a marriage between us. A strategic alliance that would unite our territories and business interests. I have refused consistently and emphatically. Katerina, however, has chosen to interpret my refusals as playing hard to get rather than actual rejection. She seemed to think you had some kind of understanding. We had dinner once, at her father's insistence, 2 years ago. I made it clear during that dinner that I had no romantic interest in her and would not be pursuing any kind of relationship. She apparently heard what she wanted to hear, rather than what I actually said. He turned to face me. This is the reality of my world, Natalia. There are people who believe they have claims on me, on my time, on my future. Marrying you was not just about protecting you from Marcus. It was also about making clear to everyone, including persistent women like Katerina, that I am no longer available for their schemes. So I'm a political statement as well as a wife, I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. His expression shifted immediately, and he crossed to me in 3 long strides. His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. You are my wife. That is all that matters. Yes, our marriage serves certain practical purposes. Your protection, my clearly stated unavailability to others. But do not mistake utility for the entirety of what you are to me. His thumb traced my lower lip. I married you because I wanted you. Because I want you still. Because every day I discover new things about you that make me more certain I made the right choice. She's very beautiful, I said quietly, and probably from the right kind of family, with the right connections. She is a viper, Alexei interrupted flatly. Beautiful, yes, but venomous. Her family is known for their cruelty, their willingness to sacrifice anyone for advantage. She would have been a nightmare as a wife, constantly scheming, constantly looking for ways to increase her own power at my expense. You, on the other hand, he smiled slightly. You write novels and drink terrible coffee and try to teach my staff English phrases they will never use. You make me laugh and challenge my assumptions and look at me like I am more than just a tool for protection or advancement. I do drink terrible coffee, I admitted, some of the tension easing from my shoulders. Atrocious coffee, he agreed, pressing a kiss to my forehead. But I would not change a single thing about you. The incident with Katerina should have been the end of it, but 3 days later, Elena brought me the morning papers with a worried expression. Mrs. Volkova, you should see this, she said, unfolding the society section of one of Chicago's newspapers. The headline made my stomach drop. Bratva boss's surprise marriage, love match or strategic move. The article was relatively balanced, discussing Alexei's marriage to an unknown American woman named Natalie Pierce, and speculating about whether it was a genuine relationship or a strategic alliance. But it was the accompanying photo that truly bothered me. A grainy shot of Alexei and Katerina from what must have been that dinner 2 years ago, positioned in a way that made them look intimately connected. The caption read, "Sources close to the Volkov family suggest the marriage came as a surprise to many, including Katerina Sokolova, daughter of rival Bratva leader Dmitry Sokolov, who many believed had an understanding with Volkov. I am sorry," Elena said softly. The papers, they love to create drama where there is none. It's fine, I said, though my hands trembled as I set the paper down. It's not like they printed anything untrue. I am an unknown American, and people probably were surprised. But they make it sound like there is something between Mr. Volkov and that woman, when there is nothing. Never has been. Elena's voice was firm. I have worked for this family for 15 years. I have seen many women try to catch Alexei Dmitrievich's eye. None succeeded until you. I wanted to believe her. But the article had planted seeds of doubt that grew roots quickly. Was I really what Alexei wanted? Or was I simply convenient? A way to solve multiple problems at once, give me protection while simultaneously shutting down the arranged marriage schemes of families like the Sokolovs. That evening, when Alexei returned home, I was in my writing room staring at a blank page, unable to form coherent sentences through the spiral of anxiety. "You saw the article," he said from the doorway. Not a question. "Yes." He moved into the room, his presence filling the space. "And now you are wondering if what we have is real." "Are you reading my mind now?" "I am reading your face. You get this small crease between your eyebrows when you are worried." His fingers touched the spot gently. "The article is lies and speculation, Natalia. Katerina's father likely planted it in an attempt to embarrass me or drive a wedge between us." "Is it working?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Only if you let it." He crouched beside my chair, bringing himself to eye level. "Listen to me carefully. I have spent 30 years building my reputation, my power, my position. I do not do anything, without careful consideration of the consequences. When I married you, I did so knowing it would anger the Sokolovs, knowing it would surprise my associates, knowing it would invite exactly this kind of scrutiny and speculation. Then why? Because I wanted you more than I cared about any of that." His voice was fierce. Because for the first time in my life, I met someone who made me want to be selfish, who made me choose personal desire over strategic advantage. If I had wanted to marry for politics, I would have accepted one of the dozen offers I have received over the years. I married you because you are what I want, Natalia. Not despite the complications, but because you are worth every complication. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm not used to being wanted for myself. Marcus wanted me because I made him feel powerful. I've spent so long being afraid of being wanted that I don't know how to accept that it might be real. Then let me help you learn. He pulled me from the chair and into his arms, holding me close against his chest, where I could hear the steady beat of his heart. Every day I will show you what it means to be wanted, to be valued, to be cherished, until you believe it in your bones the way I know it in mine. That's a lot of pressure on yourself. I am accustomed to pressure. His lips brushed the top of my head. And you, wife, are worth the effort. The scandal, such as it was, died down over the following weeks. Alexei made a point of being seen with me in public, at restaurants, at charity events, at the opera where I fell asleep during the second act, and he found it adorable rather than embarrassing. Each appearance sent a clear message. This marriage was real, permanent, not open to speculation or interference. But it was a different kind of appearance that truly cemented my place in Alexei's world. 6 weeks after our wedding, he informed me we would be attending a gathering of the Bratva families, an annual meeting where business was discussed and alliances were maintained. "You do not have to attend," he said, watching me carefully. "These gatherings can be intense, but your presence would send a strong message about the strength of our union." "What kind of message?" "That you are not a temporary distraction or a strategic error. That you are my wife, my partner, someone worthy of respect and protection from the entire organization." He paused. "But I will not force you. This is your choice." I thought about refusing. The idea of walking into a room full of Russian mobsters and their families was terrifying. But I also remembered Katerina's contemptuous assessment, the article's speculation, the whispers I'd noticed when we appeared in public. I'll go, I decided. But you have to promise not to leave me alone with anyone terrifying. His smile was warm. I promise. Though I should warn you, everyone there will likely be at least somewhat terrifying. It is the nature of this world. The gathering was held at an estate outside the city, a sprawling property that reminded me uncomfortably of something from The Godfather. Cars lined the circular drive, expensive imports that probably cost more than most houses. Men in suits that screamed money and danger stood at strategic positions, watching every arrival with professional vigilance. Inside, the house was elegant in that old-world way that spoke of traditions maintained across generations. The main room was filled with people, men in suits conducting business in corners, women in designer dresses exchanging carefully polite conversation, children surprisingly present and apparently accustomed to these gatherings. The moment we entered, conversations paused. Every eye in the room turned to assess me. The unknown American who'd somehow caught the attention of one of the city's most powerful Bratva leaders. Alexei's hand tightened on my waist. "Breathe," he murmured. "And smile. Never let them see uncertainty." I plastered on what I hoped was a confident smile and let him guide me through the room. He introduced me to what felt like hundreds of people, names and faces blurring together in a parade of polite assessments and measuring glances. But it was the elderly man sitting in a place of honor near the fireplace who truly captured my attention. He had to be in his 80s, with silver hair and eyes that were still sharp despite his age. When Alexei approached him, his entire demeanor shifted to one of genuine respect. "Uncle Mikhail," he said in Russian, then switched to English. "May I present my wife, Natalia?" "So," the old man said, his English heavily accented but clear, "this is the woman who finally caught the uncatchable Alexei Volkov." His eyes swept over me with an assessment that felt like being X-rayed. "Come closer, girl. Let me see what you are made of." I approached, trying not to show my nervousness. He studied me for a long moment, then made a sound that might have been approval. "You have kind eyes," he pronounced, "but also strength. Good. Alexei needs someone strong enough to stand beside him, not simply someone who will follow behind." He glanced at Alexei. "You chose well, nephew. Better than all the vapid society girls your mother kept trying to force on you." "Thank you, uncle." Alexei's voice carried genuine warmth. "Now go, conduct your business. Let me speak with your wife alone." Alexei hesitated, clearly torn between respecting his elder and protecting me. I squeezed his hand. "It's fine. Go." After he left reluctantly, the old man gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit. Tell me how you met my nephew. And do not give me whatever sanitized version he has been telling people. I want the truth." So I told him. About Marcus. About running into the restaurant in terror. About Alexei's immediate and absolute decision that I was his to protect. About the whirlwind courtship and the quick marriage and the strangeness of going from being afraid to being safe in the span of 2 weeks. Uncle Mikhail listened without interruption, his expression revealing nothing. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My nephew is a good man," he said finally. "A hard man, a dangerous man, but good at his core. His grandfather, my brother, would be proud of what he has built." He paused. "But he has also been alone for too long, has isolated himself behind walls of power and fear. I am glad you broke through those walls, Natalia Volkova. I think you will be good for him." "I hope so," I said honestly. "You already are." He smiled, the expression softening his weathered features. I have not seen him smile genuinely in years. Today, walking in with you, he smiled 3 times before he even reached me. That is what you have given him, the ability to find joy in something beyond power and duty. The evening progressed with surprising ease after that. Having Uncle Mikhail's approval seemed to ease the scrutiny from others. Women who'd been coolly assessing began to approach with genuine friendliness, sharing stories about their own marriages into Bratva families, and offering advice about navigating this complicated world. It was near the end of the evening when Katerina Sokolova appeared. She swept into the room like she owned it, wearing a dress that was simultaneously elegant and provocative, her blonde hair arranged in a style that probably took hours to achieve. Several people greeted her with the kind of cautious respect that suggested her father's power was real and present. Her eyes found me across the room, and I saw calculation flash across her face before she smiled and began moving in my direction. "So we meet again," she said, her voice carrying just enough to attract attention from those nearby. "Mrs. Volkova, was it?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "How lovely that Alexei finally married." Her smile didn't reach her eyes, though I must admit, it came as quite a surprise to those of us who know him well. He always swore he would never marry, would never allow anyone that close to him. "People change," I said simply. "Do they?" She tilted her head. "Or do they simply make strategic decisions and dress them up as something more palatable?" Before I could respond, Alexei materialized at my side, his presence immediately commanding. "Katerina, I thought I made it clear you were not welcome in my establishments." "This is not your establishment, Alexei, darling. This is a family gathering, and my family has as much right to be here as yours." Her eyes glittered with malice. "Unless you plan to start a war over a simple conversation with your wife." The word wife dripped with such contempt that several nearby conversations paused. "I plan to do whatever is necessary to protect my wife from those who would disrespect her," Alexei said, his voice deadly calm. "And making it clear that my wife holds a position of respect in this community is not starting a war. It is establishing a fact." "A fact," Katerina repeated. "Is that what we're calling convenient marriages now? Katerina Dmitrievna?" Uncle Mikhail's voice cut through the tension. "You will show respect to Alexei Volkov's wife, or you will leave. The choice is yours." The room had gone completely silent. Katerina's face flushed with anger and embarrassment as she realized she'd overstepped. Even with her father's power behind her, directly defying Uncle Mikhail at a family gathering was not something anyone did lightly. "Of course," she said, her voice tight. "My apologies if I offended. I was simply surprised by the sudden marriage." "Your surprise is noted and irrelevant," Uncle Mikhail said dismissively. "Alexei has made his choice. The family accepts it. You would do well to do the same." Katerina's hands clenched into fists, but she forced a smile. "As you say, Uncle Mikhail." She turned and walked away, her posture rigid with suppressed fury. The conversations resumed gradually, though I noticed several people now looking at me with new respect. I'd been publicly defended by Uncle Mikhail, an endorsement that apparently carried significant weight in this world. "I am sorry," Alexei murmured in my ear. "She should not have approached you." "It's fine," I said, though my hands were shaking. "I can handle a jealous woman." "She is not just jealous." His voice was grim. "She is vindictive, and now she has been publicly humiliated. She will not forget that." "Are you worried?" "I am cautious." He pulled me closer against his side. "But you are under my protection, under the family's protection now. She would have to be truly foolish to move against you. And whatever else Katerina is, she is not usually foolish." As we left the gathering hours later, I felt exhausted, but oddly triumphant. I'd survived my introduction to Alexei's world. I'd earned Uncle Mikhail's approval. I'd stood my ground against Katerina's cattiness. "You did well tonight," Alexei said, as we drove home through the dark city streets. Better than well. You were perfect. I didn't do anything except stand there and try not to embarrass you. You held your head high when people were judging you. You answered Uncle Mikhail honestly. You did not back down from Katerina even though she outranks you in terms of family connections. His hand found mine, squeezing gently. You showed them exactly what I told them you were. Strong enough to be my wife. Strong enough to belong in this world. Do I belong, though? I asked quietly. Really? I'm just a barista from Iowa who happened to run into the right restaurant at the right time. You are Natalia Volkova, he corrected firmly. My wife, a member of the Volkov family, and you belong wherever you choose to be, simply because you are you. The certainty in his voice made me almost believe it. The threat came 2 weeks after the family gathering, delivered with the kind of precision that made it clear this wasn't amateur hour. I was at the restaurant, working through the lunch rush and coordinating with Mikhail about an upcoming private event, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple. A photograph of me leaving the penthouse that morning, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. No words, just the image and the clear implication. Someone was watching. Someone had access. Someone wanted me to know I was vulnerable. My hands went cold. I showed the message to Mikhail, whose expression darkened immediately. Stay here, he ordered, already pulling out his own phone. Do not go anywhere alone. I am calling Alexei now. Alexei arrived within 15 minutes, moving through the restaurant with barely controlled fury. Dmitri and Pavel flanked him, both wearing expressions that suggested violence was imminent and welcome. Let me see, Alexei demanded, and I handed over my phone with shaking hands. He studied the image with cold calculation, then showed it to Dmitri. The angle suggests it was taken from the building across the street, 3rd or 4th floor, eastern exposure. I will have men there within the hour, Dmitri said. Do more than that. Alexei's voice was deadly quiet. Find out who owns every unit in that building. Find out who has access. Find out who has been asking questions about my wife or my schedule. And when you find them... He paused, something dangerous flickering in his pale eyes. Bring them to me. Alexei, I said quietly. Maybe we should just call the police. The police cannot help with this, Natalia. He turned to face me fully. Whoever sent this message knows exactly